Okay, so Mrs. Olson and my trusty assistant Daisy here, teaching you Hamlet. You're welcome. It's not often that cats are teaching Hamlet, but Daisy feels very concerned about the education of our students. And so she is always ready and available to grade, to help with paperwork, to help teach, whatever she has to do. She's here for you, the student. Fact. Okay, so we're going to read Act 5, Scene 1. So in this scene, we get Hamlet's return from his journey, and he's actually going to come to the graveyard first. He's going to see some grave diggers. He's talking to them. This is the famous scene that has the skull. A lot of times you'll see a scene with, like a Shakespearean, like a guy being one of Shakespeare's characters, and he has a skull in his hand, and he's talking about it. This is the scene, okay? So Hamlet is with the grave diggers. He's contemplating again the frailty of life. And during this scene, the funeral party will be coming through for Ophelia's funeral. Yikes. And Hamlet doesn't know whose funeral it is. Double yikes. Okay.
Is she to be buried in Christian burial when she willfully seeks her own salvation?
I tell thee she is. Therefore make her grave straight. The crowner hath sat on her and finds it Christian burial.
How can that be unless she drowned herself in her own defense?
Why, 'tis found so.
It must be se offendendo. It cannot be else, for here lies the point. If I drown myself wittingly, it argues an act. And an act hath three branches. It is to act, to do, to perform. Argal, she drowned herself wittingly.
Nay, but hear you, good man Delver.
Give me leave. Here lies the water. Good. Here stands the man. Good. If the man go to this water and drown himself, it is, will he, nil he goes. Mark you that. But if the water come to him and drown him, he drowns not himself. Argal, he that is not guilty of his own death shortens not his own life.
But is this law?
Aye, Mary, is crowner's quest law.
Well, you have the truth on't. If this had not been a gentlewoman, she should have been buried out of Christian burial.
Why, there thou say'st. And the more pity that great folk should have countenance in this world to drown or hang themselves more than they're even Christian. Come, my spade. There is no ancient gentlemen but gardeners, ditchers, and grave makers. They hold up Adam's profession.
Was he a gentleman?
He was the first that ever bore arms.
Why, he had none.
What? Art a heathen? How dost thou understand the Scripture? The Scripture says Adam digged. Could he dig without arms? I'll put another question to thee. If thou answerest me not to the purpose, confess thyself.
Go to.
What is he that builds stronger than either the mason, the shipwright, or the carpenter?
The gallows maker. For that frame outlives 1,000 tenants.
I like thy wit well, in good faith. The gallows does well, but how does it well? It does well to those that do ill. Now, thou dost ill to say the gallows is built stronger than the church. Argal, the gallows may do well to thee. To it again, come.
Who builds stronger than a mason, a shipwright, or a carpenter?
Aye, tell me that and unyoke.
Marry, now, I can tell.
To it.
Mass, I cannot tell.
Cudgel thy brains no more about it, for your dull ass will not mend his pace with beating. And when you are asked this question next, say, a grave maker. The houses he makes last till doomsday. Go, get thee in and fetch me a stoop of liquor. In
Oh, we'll let him sing.
youth, when I did love me, thought it was very sweet to contract all the time for all my behove. Oh, me thought there was nothing meet.
Okay, so you have these two grave diggers who are having this conversation and just kind of talking about the importance of, people who dig graves and taking care of the dead, and talks about how, kind of what are the important jobs, and, who's he that builds stronger than either a mason, a shipwright, or a carpenter? And, of course, the answer is a grave maker. The houses he makes last till doomsday. So, yeah, it's kind of morbid humor, right? A little bit grotesque. So, and then he's singing while he's digging the grave for Ophelia. He's digging the grave for Ophelia. Now Hamlet is coming into the scene. Oh no.
Has this fellow no feeling of his business? He sings in grave making.
Custom hath made it in him a property of easiness.
'Tis e'en so. The hand of little employment hath the daintier sense.
But age with the stealing steps hath clawed me in his clutch, and hath chipped me into the land as if I had never been such.
That skull had a tongue in it and could sing once. How the knave jolts it to the ground as if 'twere Cain's jawbone that did the first murder. This might be the pate of a politician which this ass now o'erreaches, one that would circumvent God, might it not?
It might, my lord.
Or of a courtier which could say, "Good morrow, sweet lord. How dost thou, sweet lord?" And this might be my lord such a one that praised my lord such a one's horse when he went to beg it, might it not?
Aye, my lord.
Why, e'en so. And now my lady worms, chapless and knocked about the mazzard with a sexton's spade. Here's fine revolution, and we had the trick to see it. Do these bones cost no more the breeding, but to play at loggets with them? Ugh, mine ache to think on't.
A pickaxe and a spade for and a shrouding sheet. Oh, a pit of clay for to be made for such a guest is meet.
There's another. Why, may not that be the skull of a lawyer?
Okay, so back in this era, whenever they are digging new graves, so they don't really bury people in like coffins and stuff. Like they're just kind of like throwing their body in the dirt and then they put the dirt over them. So they actually decompose pretty fast. And so you're digging through bones to put a new dead body down there. Seems morbid. So that's why why he ends up having a skull in his hand at some point talking about it, is because they're literally digging through old bodies and old graves to bury someone new. Ophelia.
Where be his quiddities now? His quilities, his cases, his tenures, and his tricks? Why does he suffer this mad knave now to knock him about the sconce with a dirty shovel, and will not tell him of his action of battery? This fellow might be in his time a great buyer of land, with his statutes, his recognizances, his fines, his double vouchers, his recoveries. Is this the fine of his fines and the recovery of his recoveries, to have his fine pate full of fine dirt? Will his vouchers vouch him no more of his purchases, and double ones too, than the length and breadth of a pair of indentures? The very conveyances of his lands will scarcely lie in this box, and must the inheritor himself have no more, huh?
Not a jot more, my lord.
Is not parchment made of sheepskins?
Aye, my lord, and of calves' skins too.
They are sheep and calves which seek out assurance in that. I will speak to this fellow. Whose grave's this, sirrah?
Mine, sir. Oh, a pit of clay for to be made for such a guest is meet.
I think it be thine indeed, for thou liest in't.
You lie out on't, sir, and therefore 'tis not yours. For my part, I do not lie in't, yet it is mine.
Thou dost lie in't to be in't, and say it is thine. 'Tis for the dead, not for the quick. Therefore thou liest.
'Tis a quick lie, sir. 'Twill away again from me to you.
What man dost thou dig it for?
For no man, sir.
What woman, then?
For none, neither.
Who is to be buried in't?
One that was a woman, sir, but rest her soul, she's dead.
How absolute the knave is. We must speak by the card, or equivocation will undo us.
Okay, so Hamlet's trying to find out whose grave it is, and the guy's being entirely obtuse. He's like, which man is it for? And he's like, it's not for a man. What woman is it for? It's not for a woman. It's not for anybody who's living, is what he's trying to say. Okay, we know that. Obviously, the person is dead. What corpse is it for? He's so difficult. Talking to people like this really frustrates me.
By the Lord Horatio, this 3 years I have took note of it, the age is grown so picked that the toe of the peasant comes so near the heel of the courtier he galls his kibe. How long hast thou been gravemaker?
Of all the days in the year, I came to it that day that our last king, Hamlet, overcame Fortinbras.
How long is that since?
Cannot you tell that? Every fool can tell that. It was that very day that young Hamlet was born. He that is mad and sent into England.
Aye, marry. Why was he sent into England?
Why, because he was mad. He shall recover his wits there, or if he do not, 'tis no great matter there.
Why?
'Twill not be seen in him there. There the men are as mad as he.
How came he mad?
Very strangely, they say.
How strangely?
Faith, even with losing his wits.
Upon what ground?
Why, here in Denmark. I have been sexton here, man and boy, 30 years.
How long will a man lie of the earth ere he rot?
Faith.
Really interesting for Hamlet to have this conversation with the gravedigger about himself. So the gravedigger says, oh yeah, I've been gravedigger since, the last king was doing such and such, and it's been a really long time, like back whenever Prince Hamlet was born. And so, he doesn't recognize him. And so then he's asking all about himself. He's like, wait, young Prince Hamlet is crazy? What did he go crazy with? And so they're having this whole conversation about him, about Hamlet, and he's just going along with it. He's like finding out the information, like, what are people saying about me? And then he's wanting to know more about the other, like, bones that are in this grave.
If he be not rotten before he die, as we have many pocky courses nowadays that will scarce hold the laying in, he will last you some 8 year or 9 year. A tanner will last you 9 year.
Why he more than another?
Why, sir, his hide is so tanned with his trade that he will keep out water a great while. And your water is a sore decayer of your horse and dead body. Here's a skull now hath lien you with the earth 23 years.
Whose was it?
A whoreson mad fellow's it was. Whose do you think it was?
Nay, I know not.
A pestilence on him for a mad rogue. He poured a flagon of Rhenish on my head once. This same skull, sir, was, sir, Yorick's skull, the king's jester.
This?
E'en that.
Let me see. Alas, poor Yorick.
He remembers him.
I knew him, Horatio. A fellow of infinite jest, of most excellent fancy. He hath bore me on his back 1,000 times. And now how abhorred in my imagination it is. My gorge rises at it. Here hung those lips that I have kissed I know not how oft. Where be your jibes now, your gambols, your songs, your flashes of merriment that were wont to set the table on a roar? Not one now to mock your own grinning. Quite chapfallen. Now get you to my lady's chamber and tell her, let her paint an inch thick. To this favor she must come. Make her laugh at that. Prithee, Horatio, tell me one thing.
What's that, my lord?
Dost thou think Alexander looked to this fashion of the earth?
E'en so.
And smelt so? Bah!
E'en so, my lord.
To what base uses we may return, Horatio.
Okay, so now Hamlet's beginning to kind of think again about death and the fact that everybody dies, and even the greatest people in the world die. He's talking about Alexander the Great, who at some point is just a dead body buried in a grave that decomposes. Yikes.
Why may not imagination trace the noble dust of Alexander till he find it stopping a bunghole?
'Twere to consider too curiously to consider so.
No, faith, not a jot, but to follow him thither with modesty enough and likelihood to lead it, as thus. Alexander died, Alexander was buried, Alexander returneth to dust. The dust is earth, of earth we make loam, and why of that loam whereto he was converted might they not stop a beer barrel? Imperious Caesar, dead and turned to clay, might stop a hole to keep the wind away. Oh, that that earth which kept the world in awe should patch a wall to expel the winter's flaw.
Yeah.
Soft, but soft a while.
Hey, Daisy, there's nothing. She's very concerned. I think she heard the bell. Oh, no. Daisy has noticed Mr. Olson coming up the stairs, and she's concerned. One must be vigilant. She's been helping me teach, but she did hear you. Good. She's my watch cat. She always lets me know if stuff's going on, but I'm not seeing. Oh no! She almost knocked my tea over. Mr. Olson chased her. That was very unkind. Did you see her? Wow, impressive. Okay. Okay, so I guess Daisy has given up on teaching for a bit because she got scared away. Scaredy cat. Ridiculous.
Here comes the king, the queen, the courtiers. Who is this they follow? And with such maimed rites?
Okay, so he mentions, remember he's talking about Alexander the Great and even great men die. He also mentions Imperious Caesar, dead and turned to clay. So, oh my gosh, everybody dies. True. Thank you, Hamlet. Deep thoughts. Then he sees that the king, queen, everybody's coming in for this funeral, and he's wondering, I wonder who died. It's weird.
This doth betoken the course they followed did with desperate hand fordo its own life. 'Twas of some estate. Couch we a while and mark.
So he says that the funeral rites, and with such maimed rites, this doth betoken the course they followed did with desperate hand fordo its own life. So there's something in their funeral, their walk to the funeral, that indicates that this is not a funeral for a person who died like by accident, but this is a funeral for somebody who died by suicide. So he's gonna hang out and see who the funeral's for.
What ceremony else?
That is Laertes, a very noble youth. Mark.
What ceremony else?
Her obsequies have been as far enlarged as we have warranty. Her death was doubtful, and but that great command o'ersways the order. She should in ground unsanctified been lodged, till the last trumpet. For charitable prayers, shards, flints, and pebbles should be thrown on her. Yet here she is allowed her virgin krantz, her maiden struments, and the bringing home of bell and burial.
Must there no more be done?
No more be done. We should profane the service of the dead to sing a requiem and such rest to her as to peace-parted souls.
Lay her at the earth, and from her fair and unpolluted flesh may violets spring. I tell thee, churlish priest, a ministering angel shall my sister be when thou liest howling.
What? The fair Ophelia?
Okay, so Laertes is having an argument about how they're going to bury Ophelia, because of course back in the day, and I don't actually know my like church rules and things when it comes to what still happens, but for a long time, and maybe still, if a person was known to have committed suicide, they couldn't be buried in a churchyard. So they had to be buried like outside of the churchyard, which for a lot of people, that's kind of a deeply painful thing to happen. Now, in the midst of this, Laertes is arguing about how wonderful his sister was and how terrible this is that they're trying not to bury her in the churchyard. And this is the point that Hamlet hears that Ophelia has killed herself.
Sweets to the sweet, farewell. I hoped thou shouldst have been my Hamlet's wife. I thought thy bride bed to have decked, sweet maid, and not have strewed thy grave.
Oh, treble woe. Full 10 times treble on that cursed head, whose wicked deed thy most ingenious sense deprived thee of. Hold off the earth a while, till I have caught her once more in mine arms.
Okay, so Laertes is kind of like calling down curses on Hamlet, who he blames for Ophelia's death because Hamlet killed Polonius, and that was the thing that Laertes sees made her insane. So he's angry about that, and then he jumps in the grave, and he's like holding dead Ophelia. So that's weird.
Oh, now pile your dust upon the quick and dead, till of this flat a mountain you have made, to o'ertop old Pelion or the skyish head of blue Olympus.
What is he whose grief bears such an emphasis? Whose phrase of sorrow conjures the wandering stars and makes them stand like wonder-wounded hearers? This is I, Hamlet the Dane.
The devil take thy soul!
Thou prayest not well. I pray thee, take thy fingers from my throat.
So Hamlet jumps down. Hamlet comes out like screaming, like, "Hey, why are you saying that stuff?" And here I am, Hamlet the Dane, and Laertes is going after him. Hamlet jumps like they're fighting it out right here at Ophelia's grave.
For though I am not splenitive and rash, yet have I in me something dangerous, which let thy wisdom fear. Hold off thy hand.
Pluck them asunder.
Gentlemen, good, my lord.
Be quiet. Why, I will fight with him upon this theme until my eyelids will no longer wag.
Oh, my son, what theme?
I loved Ophelia. 40,000 brothers could not with all their quantity of love make up my sum. What wilt thou do for her?
Oh, he is mad, Laertes.
For love of God, forbear him.
Swoon, show me what thou do. Would weep, would fight, would fast, would tear thyself, would drink up Isel, eat a crocodile. I'll do it. Dost thou come here to whine, to outface me with leaping in her grave? Be buried quick with her, and so will I. And if thou prate of mountains, let them throw millions of acres on us, till our ground, singeing his pate against the burning zone, make Ossa like a wart. Nay, and thou'lt mouth? I'll rant as well as thou.
This is mere madness. And thus a while the fit will work on him. Anon, as patient as the female dove when that her golden couplets are disclosed, his silence will sit drooping.
Hear you, sir. What is the reason that you use me thus? I loved you ever. But it is no matter. Let Hercules himself do what he may. The cat will mew, and dog will have his day.
I pray thee, good Horatio, wait upon him. Strengthen your patience in our last night's speech. We'll put the matter to the present push. Good Gertrude, set some watch over your son. This grave shall have a living monument. An hour of quiet thereby shall we see. Till then in patience our proceeding be.
Okay, so Hamlet says, he would have done anything for Ophelia. He loved Ophelia, so he's kind of ticked off with Laertes acting so dramatic because he feels like his loss is greater. He ends up leaving, and King Claudius tells Laertes basically, hey, don't forget our plan. We're going to go through with our plan, and this is all going to work out. You're going to get your vengeance for your sister and your father. So don't worry about what's happening here. And then he's keeping an eye on Hamlet, making sure he's okay until the duel, where he can get rid of Hamlet effectively through Laertes. And he's putting a watch over Ophelia's grave, just so nothing happens to her. Okay, so that ends Act 5, Scene 1. Last scene coming up.